going back across now to Helsinki in Finland, where we are getting the latest images of that press conference that is all set to begin. There we have the latest visuals coming in from the presidential palace's meeting hall, where that joint news conference is all set to begin after Russian President Vladimir Putin met with US President Donald Trump. It was hailed as a good start by the US President, just in a brief remark made after that one-on-one personal meeting that he had with his Russian counterpart. This was a 2-hour-long meeting. It was stipulated to be a 90-minute long one, but it stretched beyond that stipulated time. It went on for 2 hours, post which they were also joined in by their advisors and aides. That meeting also concluded just a few moments ago. And in a short while from now, we will have that joint briefing that will begin, addressed by the two leaders. The US president, just a short while after the first personal meeting concluded with his Russian counterpart, called it a very good start, quote unquote, to that meeting. And in the initial remarks that were made by him before that personal meeting began, he said that the two leaders are hopeful of forging a new relationship. Let's go straight across now to Fred Weir, Russian affairs expert, joining us from Moscow for more on this. Fred, all eyes on that briefing that is all set to begin in just a few moments from now. But we have heard the president call it a very good start to that meeting. Even in his earlier remarks, he said that a lot of hope and anticipation, of course, has been laid on that meeting. But to your mind, the issues that have been doing the rounds on what could have or would have come up for discussion, your 2 cents on what, to your mind, would have dominated the talks?
Well, there was no agenda. It's quite a remarkable Trump-era kind of thing. He wings it. He goes in and he says whatever is on his mind. There's very, very little preparation, although all his advisors are there, and they include some very, very competent people. It's just I'm at a loss to know what came out of his mouth when he was alone with Vladimir Putin. I know what Putin's concerns are: nuclear arms control, Syria, Ukraine, probably in about that order. But what did Trump choose to talk about? I think we just have to wait for him to come up to the podium. And even then, he might not tell us.
When it comes to the very fact that the two leaders were sitting for that one-on-one meeting, something that looked unlikely over the last few months, specifically over the last few weeks, given the allegations of the Russian meddling in the 2016 election. So the very fact that the two leaders actually came to this point of having a personal interaction followed by a meeting with their aides is a huge win for both sides.
Yes, I think that's true. You know, I have been asking Russian foreign policy experts, including some who are closely connected to the Kremlin, why even bother doing this? Why should Putin go and talk to Trump at a time when he's so severely embattled at home? Anything that happens will be cast as treason, Trump selling out. Even if they just shake hands and talk about the weather, it will be cast in the darkest possible light at home in the United States. So why not just wait for some closure on all this collusion business in the United States? And the Russians tell me, no, look, these are two great superpowers. They are run by their institutions. They are like two ships sailing in the night, and they have got to communicate. There are so many dangers out there. Even the danger of accidental nuclear war has sprung back onto the agenda. They simply have to get back to talking and informing channels and back channels of communication. And if this is the way to do it, even amid all this acrimony, all this trench warfare in Washington, then that's what we're going to do. So yeah, I think this is the Russian expectation. The meeting has happened. They apparently, I mean, we'll find out in a few minutes, but apparently they had a nice conversation, and that's a win.
And the very fact that they had that conversation is also being viewed as a win all throughout. Fred, speaking a little bit about the extent to which the Russian meddling in the U.S. presidential elections would have come up for discussion. Of course, we will wait for the confirmation to come in from the leaders themselves. But the very fact that Trump, was asked to not go ahead with this summit and was supposed to, adhere to the advice that was given to him by many of holding Russia accountable. Realistically speaking, of course, in geopolitics, that's not something that he would have done or he could have done. But the very fact that if this issue did come up for discussion again, would be a huge win for Donald Trump domestically. Would you agree?
Not really. It's come up every time Putin has a meeting with anybody. I know I've been in press conferences with my fellow American correspondents. Everybody gets up, almost everybody gets up and asks him a question about it. He has dealt with this for the past year and a half over and over again, and in different words. He sometimes even tries to joke about it, but basically he denies the Russian state had anything to do with it. Now, Trump can get all wound up and everybody can tell him you've got to go in there and hold Putin accountable. But all that's going to happen is that Putin will shrug his shoulders and say, didn't do it. You just can't conduct business this way. Either the United States should cut off all relations with Russia until they sort it out, or we have to go ahead with the agenda we have, and it's those things: nuclear arms control, Syria, Ukraine, a few other rather critical issues that the two superpowers should be communicating about.
Certainly, and the very fact that the two superpowers do not agree on more issues than they agree upon, be it the war in Syria, be it the Russian meddling in the U.S. elections, be it the annexation of Crimea, the kind of reactions that have been coming in, Fred, Donald Trump calling it a very good beginning, but not too much emphasis to be laid, certainly, on the initial remarks that have been coming in. We will, of course, wait and watch for what the two leaders really have to say on a host of those issues. But the kind of perception that this meeting really builds for the two nations, your view on that?
Well, yeah, I think they've been in such a miserable condition. It just keeps getting worse and worse, and the relations keep ratcheting down. And it's not just on the rhetorical level. The U.S. Embassy here in Moscow is working on a skeleton crew because of all the expulsions. All the things that they used to do, social outreach and so on, they can't really do anymore. Even issuing visas is a hard thing. All the channels of communication, and between governments, there are many, many different levels at which people have each other's phone number and they talk to each other when something comes up. It's not happening for many months now. It has been at rock bottom. And so just the fact that they're talking, if the atmosphere changes just a little bit, but especially if they decide to get talks started on some things like renewing the New START agreement, if they set up a commission to discuss that, that will be a big plus. I mean, a physical, material plus, that actual infrastructure of communications will start getting restored.
All right, stay with me, Fred. These are the live visuals that we're getting to you of some ruckus that is emerging at the venue of that briefing, which is to be addressed by the two leaders in just a short while from now. This chaos that is erupting after an individual has held up a banner reading out a message. Let's take a listen into what's happening. Visuals of that commotion at the venue of the Trump-Putin press conference. A man walks across the stage area and towards members of the media and members of the delegations, and tries to read out a message that he is holding on a piece of paper, but is whisked away by the security personnel and the teams deployed. But moments of confusion and commotion as a man tries to disrupt the news conference, which is all set to begin in just a short while from now. After the conclusion of the meeting between the two leaders, Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump met in one of the most crucial meetings, the first after US President Donald Trump took over. This is these are the live visuals that we're getting to you from the venue of that joint press conference that is all set to begin after the 2 rounds of meetings between the two leaders concluded. The first round was a personal one-on-one interaction between the two leaders. No advisors during that meeting. It was plain. It was a simple meeting between the two leaders and their interpreters. Let me just get in a quick reaction from Fred. Moments of confusion, some commotion that was witnessed at the venue of the press conference, but protests also have followed Trump all the way to Helsinki yet again. Fred, we of course have to wait and watch for what that message read. All right, there we have the leaders arriving at the venue of the news conference. We see US First Lady Melania Trump also taking her seat. Those visuals from earlier of that commotion that was witnessed at the venue of that press conference, which is to be addressed by US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart. That message being taken away from that man who tried to create ruckus at the news conference venue and being whisked away by the security personnel just a few moments after he walked up to the stage holding a message which remains unclear, but we will wait for further confirmation on who this man is and what is the message that he was trying to hold up for members of the media to see. On the left of your screens, the stage is all set for that joint news conference to be addressed by the two leaders after they held their crucial meeting, the first meeting between the two leaders after US President Donald Trump took over. The personal interaction, the personal meeting between the two leaders with just their interpreters lasted for about 2 hours.